Alright guys, so I'm down in my shop. I'm going to put this Kraken together. This is how I've been putting them together. This way works great for me and my setup. I'm sure there's many other different ways to do this, but I'm just going to hop in here and start building, and anything that I do that I feel is different or special, I'll slow the video down and I'll talk about why I do what I'm doing. So here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and open all this stuff up, and we'll get building. So I did want to point out that this is the Kraken Worx V3 arms, and they have a, if you can see there, they have like a foam. I forget what type of foam. It's like a urethane foam. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus on this. There we go. But pretty cool. They do break a little bit easier, but they give you an extra one, and they are definitely a lot lighter. So all the crashes that I've broke one, I probably would have broke a regular arm anyway. So that's that. There's the bottom plate and this really convenient little battery pad that they give you, which has these like knockouts in it. So I like this battery pad a lot. Also, this is technically the 3-inch bottom plate. Same with the PDB. This PDB here is also the 3-inch PDB. They use the 3-inch PDB and the 3-inch bottom brace on the Worx edition. So it's a little bit more to lighten her up. Alright, so here's all the parts that I use in my builds. I use the Betaflight F3 board, the BFF3, and the only thing I will say is it's kind of difficult to get the gauge of wire that I use down to the ESCs, and I bottom mount my ESCs, but I'll just go through what components I'm using. I'll open them and show you what I'm using and where I'm using it. So these are what I run up through, or actually I run these down through the body, and I use the orange caps. So I'll go ahead and just open those real quick. I use these orange caps to mount down through the body. So I'm going to open up the body, and I'm going to show you guys how I drill the body out. We'll do that, and then we'll just start putting everything together. But as far as, these are what I run up through the base. These are the longest metal screws that they give you, which I'll run through these holes, and I'll run them from the bottom up. It runs into the PDB using these press nuts. That's what those black long metal screws will go up into. And then I use the shortest of the nylon nylon standoffs. I use the shortest ones of those, and then I have a trick for these that makes changing out arms much easier. And then obviously camera mount, and then the regular standoff nuts to hold the flight controller down. So we'll hop on over to drilling this body out. So this is the thicker body, which I normally use unless I don't see much of a difference in weight to running the thinner body, and this just seems to be a little bit more protectant, but I have actually yet to run the thinner body just because I don't want to shatter it yet. I wanted to see how tough this one was before I went and ran the thinner one that they send with it. So this is a reamer that I took the handle off of and chucked it in a drill, and this is the way I drill all the holes out. It gives you a nice clean, hole every time. You don't have to worry about burning it with the soldering iron. You can pick one of these reamers up at pretty much any RC car shop. They'll have them. And then I just like to go in around the back and clean the holes up. Now I run the holes a little bit bigger on the body because you're going to have these washers holding it down, and it's a lot easier to shove the bolts down through and get them through the arms, through the PDB, through the base plate when the holes are just a little bit bigger, because the bodies aren't always exactly the right. They're what do you call it? They're heat formed, so they don't always come out exactly the same every single time. So, and you're not always drilling the holes exactly on the dimple and whatnot. So, go ahead and drill the rest of this out. And then here's how I drill out the camera. Same way, just with the reamer. And then 9 times out of 10, I still go in and I trim out the hole even bigger. But this is enough to get it on the quad, so we can start building the frame. Alright, for this step what you're going to do is you're going to take one of these washers and you're going to take one of the short screws that they give you. You're going to take the PDB, put the press nut in the top of the PDB, screw in the bottom. The reason I use the bigger washer is just to protect the PDB from cracking, and also allows the bolt to spin around the washer versus spin around the PDB and scuff it all up. And then you're just gonna go ahead and tighten it down, and it'll pull it right on in. And then you just repeat this for all 4 press nuts. Alright, so now we have all 4 press nuts put into the PDB. So to put the base together, you're going to use the long metal screws that they give you. These ones here. They're the longest metal screws, and the reason I use the metal screws is these arms all interlock. They all interlock together. So technically, if you were to get in a really hard wreck, even if this one screw here gave out, it's still being held in by this screw, and none of these are going to move anywhere. So it's not like it's going to protect this arm from being broke. But what I have had happen is when you run plastic screws up through here, through the bottom, in a hard wreck, or not even in a hard wreck, in a relatively soft wreck, the top of the plastic will pop off. And now your flight controller's in there vibrating around, and you may do multiple flights before you realize that that head is broke off, wondering why it flies like crap. And the metal ones will not break, and with my setup I don't have to worry about these being metal and grounding on the carbon to the flight controller, because the flight controller runs it's either all grounds around the outside or they just don't hook anything anyway. So I'll go ahead and build this and you guys can see what's going on. So I normally get it to where it's just holding it together, but not super snug. That way I can get the rest of these arms in there and tighten them in without fighting with it. I also like that they give you at least one extra of everything in this kit. As far as, I mean, actually they give you just about one extra of everything in the kit. You get 2 bodies, you get a whole extra arm. There's at least 1 or 2 extra pieces of hardware for everything in here. You get an extra one of these on the camera, plus an extra one for the body. So yeah, you get at least 1 extra of pretty much every single thing in the kit. Alright, so now that we're at this point here, what I normally do is I will drop these in, which is where, this is the location I use them, but I use the washer on them. But I'll drop these in to get the holes lined up, because you have to take this canopy on and off often in order to get to your components inside. So I'll do that to get the arms all lined up, and then I will go ahead and torque down all of these screws. Alright, now these can come out. So, and they pretty much just fall out because of how we put them in there before we tightened everything. And I run these aluminum screw, or the aluminum washers on the silver cap head screws they give you, and these are what I use to hold the body down. Alright, so here's the little trick I was talking about. These are the standoffs that I use. They're the shortest standoff between the press nuts and these standoffs. You have just enough height on the Betaflight F3 to where you can still get to the SD card without it hitting anything. With a strap going across here. One of the tricks is, normally you have to take these and you have to thread them on here. Like so. And you have to thread them all the way down to the bottom. And then you go and break an arm, and when you take this screw out, sometimes this locks into the press nut there, and when you go to take the screw out, you'll end up either stripping this out, having a really hard time backing the screw out. It can mess up multiple different things, and it just makes things a little bit more of a pain in the ass than they need to be. So what I do is I take this drill bit here and I just drill these out to where they're the same size as the standoffs. And now it just slides over. You can put your PDB down on, or your flight controller down on it. And when you break an arm, you can pull this bolt out, pull out 2 motor bolts. You can pop the new, well, the arm's broke, but you're still gonna have to take it off the motor, obviously. But you take the old section of your arm out, put your new arm in, and you can just put the screw right back up, and usually this will stay right in place between the press nut and the flight controller, because the other 3 bolts are keeping the pressure down on it. It's just something simple that makes putting it together or replacing an arm just a little bit easier. Obviously, you still have to take the canopy off, and you have to take the top nut holding the flight controller in place. You have to still take that off, but it still makes it a little bit easier. So, just a extra step I take to make things a little bit simpler when replacing an arm. Alright, so there's everything ready to go for the electronics.